Hello everybody, today we're going to be continuing with our review series for Brawl with the Final Fantasy cards. The colors we got left today are red and green, so let's begin. Starting with red, we have Barret Wallace, the 4 mana 4/4 legendary creature human rebel with reach, and when a Barret Wallace attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of equipped creatures you control to the defending player. So this is a different take of equipment decks. Most of the commanders here we're going to be seeing in mono red all have equipment synergies, and it's important to understand how powerful equipment decks are. With Barry Wallace really cares about creatures that are equipped and it can do non-combat damage, which is quite useful in red because the early game they can do quite a bit of damage, but in the mid and late game to finish off that opponent can be quite difficult. So Barry Wallace helps you by just doing direct damage with number of equipped creatures. If we look in Arena, with the best tribal or best effects you want with this type of artifact are creatures that entered equipped. So in Arena, currently there is Reconfigure, which are creatures that are equipment as well and have the Reconfigure effect, which is to attach to a creature you control, but it comes already as a creature and as an equipment. Second one is Living Weapon. Our creatures are germs, they're 0/0 germs, and they come equipped. Next is for Mirrodin. They enter as 2/2s, and they come equipped as well. And there is one extra, which is the Job Select. There is one Job Select equipment that is a 1/1 creature, and the equipment comes attached to it. That's very important with Barry Wallace because he cares about quick creatures. Doesn't care if they're non-tokens or tokens. As long as that creature is equipped and attack, it contributes to the damage as well. Other interesting cards are cards, for example, from Pioneer, Kazul's Toll Collector, which has attached target equipment you control is 0, so you can just go for Voltron strategy of just equipping everything to the Kazul, and it just goes for lethal. You have as well Valdug, Keeper of the Flame, to reattach your equipment to 3/1 tokens. They also gain haste as a good finisher. Rook also, when it attacks, it can re-equip to Valdug. It has Trample and Haste, so it's quite useful. Or Reckless Crew, when, example, your opponent board wipe, you have a ton of equipment, so you just play the spell. These are dwarves, and you equip everything to each of these dwarves because it's X is the number of vehicles plus the number of equipments, and you reattach to each of them. So you have some finishers, some setup, and creatures that are also equipment. So I believe that would be what an archetype would look with Baron. Next we got Fearing Wild Rose Warrior, is a 3 mana 3/3 human rebel warrior, and has equipped creatures you control have haste. So all these creatures that come in pre-equipped now suddenly have haste. Whenever a non-token equipment enters, you create a token with a copy of it, and this equip ability costs 2 less to activate and sacrifice that token at the beginning of the next instant. Important to know is though those equipment tokens are the ones that leave, not the creatures. So, for example, you have a Formiridan token, you made a copy. The token that becomes a copy is the equipment, and that's the one that gets sacrificed at the next upkeep. This also means it also be a very similar strategy with Barret, and they both work together in the sense that you're able to go wide with a bunch of equipment that are creatures, double those, they gain haste, go for lethal damage, and in worst case scenario that they blocked, you still have the creature side or the equipment to use for other creatures, especially as the equip costs less. If they're 2 or less, they become effectively free, so you're able to recycle these equipments and use them later if necessary. Continuing with the equipment theme, you got Ramon, Bull of Alamigo. It's a 2-mana 2/2 with legendary creature Human Warrior, which ward pay life equal to Rabadon's power. When Rabadon attach to one target equipment controlled to target attacking creature. Important to note is that your commander has to attach that one equipment, which is pretty important. So for a commander like this, it could run very similar to an equipment theme, but you can just run specifically just the good equipment cards as you want just to attach them for pretty cheap to your commander. One of the good advantages you can do if you name in arena equipment, they are some powerful equipment. Example, Colossus Hammer. You want equipment that are cheap to cast but are expensive to equip because you can just reattach them to your commander. This would probably be the dream scenario where you get a Colossus Hammer, you give your commander haste, and that becomes a 12/12, and if the opponent destroys it, now they're taking 12 damage to face, and you can just redo that on repeat. They not only have to deal with your commander, but they also have to deal with the equipment because you can constantly be re-equipping it. Also, any equipment that gives haste is quite useful, and there are quite a few. For example, there is like Reforge, which is to the number of lands. You can also give him flying. There's quite a bit of options. I'll say the biggest limitation is finding the artifact you want. There are two ways to search in Red for your equipment in Brawl. So we look for search. There is Gamble, which is search your library for a card, put the card in your hand, and discard a card. So you can run a setup where you try to get the hammer with the Gamble and hopefully it doesn't get discarded. There's also Reckless Handling to search for an artifact card. There is Goblin Engineer that can also search for an artifact, but it sends it to the graveyard. And if you can give it haste or in a future turn, sacrifice an artifact, return target artifact card with mana 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. There are some effects to search. Those are the more important ones. So it's not impossible to have multiple ways to get the artifact you want for Rabadon. Next is the Fire Crystal, another of the crystals. This is a 4 mana with 2 and 2 red legendary artifact, and red spells you cast 1 less to cast. And creatures you control have haste. Have 6 mana and tap, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. The active ability is a bit on the expensive side, but it has the tagline of creatures you control have haste. Red really likes this keyword. And there are creatures that can give haste, but they're limited to being creatures. By having it in an artifact form, it becomes significantly more difficult to interact with. But the most important tagline would be red spells cost 1 less. There are already commanders that really want this card. Clear example would be Urabras, the 4 mana Urabras, really wants discounted red spells because it pretty much makes the 2-drops into 1-drops, and there's several 2-drops that are draw spells, so it fuels the storm engine of constantly be able to recast spells. So this card already has a home in a deck. And there's also a multicolored commander from this set that will also like spells that get discounted, either red or in other colors. So this card already will see a home. I would say if all the crystals, this is the most likely we'll see play. Red does struggle a bit to get those discounted spells. Also, red is a color combination that likes to generate constantly that 1 red mana. Quite a few commanders and legendary creatures do that effect, so being able to make them cheap helps you quite a bit, and that added text line of having haste makes cards, for example, in dragon decks, if you want to play this, you can play the copper dragon. Giving it haste means you get the treasures immediately the turn you play it, and that pretty much can end the game. So let's continue with the next color. Continuing with green, we have Traveling Chocobo. It's a 3 mana 3/2 bird, and you may look at the top card of your library at any time. And you may play lands and cast bird spells from the top of your library. And if a land or bird you control entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. This will be just the most important green card from the Final Fantasy set. And the importance of it is green already really likes to have cards that say you may play lands and cast, just in general, lands from the top of your library. Having the additional effect of birds is useful because green already has two birds it most of the time plays, which is the goose and birds of paradise. And on top of that, creatures that have triggered ability are landfall triggers specifically. There are, for example, there's the provisioner that gives you treasures and food tokens. There's the 3 mana Nissa that can give you tap for land. There's also Lotus Cobra. So it already synergizes with everything that just mono green wants to play. So this will be just a snapcraft for pretty much every green deck out there. And the added effect of birds is just icing on the cake. As for commanders, we have Tifa Lockhart, which is a 2 mana 1/2 with trample, human monk, and has landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, double Tifa Lockhart's power until end of turn. So on his own, this is a very strong commander. It will be pretty much a Voltron commander where you play Tifa, you protect her every single time, and you have ramp pump spells that give it just +3/+3 +4/+4, and then you play a land. And because, especially in Brawl, there's a lot of fetch lands, so you can play one fetch land. Even if you pump for just a 2/2/2, this becomes a 3. You play one of your fetch lands, becomes a 6, and then you search for the other land, it becomes a 12. And that's just one pump spell. It does 12 damage. This commander, especially protected, can threaten lethal very easily. It is pretty much faster than what Bristly Bill does, but also a deck like this can be very vulnerable to interaction. So in a deck like this, you want to play just every single cantrip you can. That said, there are ways around it. There's counter spells that can deal with Tifa. The other Another of the problem is nowhere to run. Nowhere to run bypasses hexproof and just makes any future hexproof irrelevant. Sacrifice spells also go around the hexproof that normally green has. Boar wipes, if that can be another effect. In transformation spells, it becomes unprotected, but normally a deck like this will just try to be always protected. So there are ways into Tifa Lockhart, and if the opponent is very greedy and plays it on 2, you can just instantly punish it. But I feel there are enough hexproof and protection spells, especially in mono green, to make this a pretty scary commander to deal with, and it always threatens the opponent. Do you have the interaction? If the answer is yes, you will probably just lose the game on the spot, and the answer is no. And you can beat Tifa, you can pretty much lock her out of the game. So, looks pretty much a gatekeeper commander, but can get easy wins into multiple decks. Next, we got Town Greeter, which is a 2 mana 1/1 human citizen. When this creature enters, mill 4 cards, and you put a land among them to your hand. And you put a town card into your hand this way, you get 2 life. So he has pretty good synergy with town lands. But very importantly, it's a mill 4. This is a quite useful card for any type of commander that wants to synergize with the graveyard and you're in green. Many of the Golgari and Sultai commanders really like to mill, and this is one of the better effects as it mills 4. It's a creature, which is a potential blocker, and you get a land drop for your next turn. And if you play towns, you're going to get the extra life. So it just does a little bit of everything you want. And it's just a key card that most mill commanders will probably be running just because it does so many things for just 2 mana. Next is the Earth Crystal. Is a 4 mana legendary artifact with green spells you cast cost 1 less. And if one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many +1 counters are put on that creature instead. And has 6 tap, distribute 2 +1/+1 counters among 1 or 2 target creatures you control. So there's already a home for this deck, would be just any Slam Against Humanity decks. We just want this card because it makes their Slime Against Humanity, instead of costing 3, cost 2. And they also benefit by getting the double triggers from the +1 counters. They're just an absolute fantastic card for those type of commanders. And even then, Grizzly Bill really likes a card like this. A lot of Celestia commanders that have synergized +1 counters want a card like this. It also makes green spells cheaper, so it's a ramp spell plus synergize with counters. There's already quite a bit of potential homes for a card like this, and it's very likely that we'll see play. Any sort of deck that wants to run these counters really likes a card like this. The only disadvantage I would say is green is not very good at finding artifacts. The most likely way to find them is if they splash with blue and go Simic, as blue does have ways to search for artifacts. So mono green, it will be, it's a nice card for them, but it's very unlikely they'll see it in the majority of their games. But if they are a +1 counter deck and they're in Simic, they can very reliably search for this card. Next we have Jumbo Cactuar. It's a 7 mana 1/7 creature plant with 10,000 needles. When this creature attacks, it gets plus 9,999 plus 0 until end of turn. So it's a very interesting card. This is pretty much a 7 mana. It can do 10,000 damage, but it can be blocked by any creature. The thing is, the green has quite a few ways to give trample. There are already creatures that give others trample. There's the 2 mana artifact that from Tarkir that many green decks already run, that taps for mana and can tap and give a creature trample. There's also the talent that can give a creature trample, which also is a fight spell, so many green decks run those anyway. You can also play this with Craterhoof Behemoth. Of course, this already has to be in play, but that's another way they can just guaranteed lethal. Pretty much, I would say it's a card to look out for, because you may say, oh, I can always block for this card, and they, in response, give it trample, and you just lose the game immediately. That's the scary part of this creature, and green is very good at finding creatures, and there are already creatures that give you trample. So if they have one piece of the puzzle of having a way to get trample, they can just search for the character, and now it threatens lethal to pretty much anything you block into. That's the scary part. The advantage is it's an expensive card. It needs another card to threaten lethal. It has no protection spells, so it just enters and effectively does nothing when it enters, meaning that it is very susceptible to removal. I would say the scariest decks that can run it, any deck that can cheat this out, or any deck that can give it haste. Example would be if you're running Sneak Attack. If you run Sneak Attack, you can give that creature from your hand by paying a red into the battlefield, and that creature gains haste, and then sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So if your deck that has Sneak Attack, the opponent just sees a Sneak Attack and immediately comes with the Jumbo Cactuar. If they don't have a blocker, they just lose the game immediately. So any ways that can sneakily play this card, maybe tapped and attacking, or just from your hand and attacking, or any way that can just a commander that gives trample and is in green really will make the jumbo cactuar instantly lethal. And finally, the last card would be Bart and Boku. It's a 5 mana with 3 and 2 green for 3 human bird with affinity for birds, so it costs 1 less to cast for each bird you control. And when Bart and Boku enters, each other bird you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature and opponent controls. So this effect is quite useful and can potentially just cost 2, but the effect that each other bird deals damage equals to its power means if you have 3 birds, it can take out a creature, and bird decks can run quite a few flyers, making this card quite nice. There is a disadvantage, is that in green, I have to change, you can go green. So we look for bird, we have a big problem, is that there's only 2 birds in arena that are playable. Birds of Paradise and Gilded Goose. Yeah, there are some others, but they are colorless and they're expensive. The other way you can play it is with changelings because they're all types, but there's still not that many. There's a couple, but not enough to make a brawl deck. So that's a disadvantage in playing this as your commanders. Currently, there's not just any birds. There's very, very few. But Bards and Book is pretty good in the 99 of any, I would say, Simic or advanced commander that really cares about birds. This card will be important to consider in the 99. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe, and comment below which of the commanders are you interested in playing from this new set. Thanks for watching.